Welcome to a pivotal moment in the world of broadcast as we proudly present the Men's Mental Health Show featuring the renowned Larry Mabry in collaboration with the Maassen Group. This essential exploration of men's mental health wouldn't be possible without the invaluable support of Rainier Avenue Radio World. Now, let's dive into this crucial conversation with Larry Mabry and the Maassen Group. Your mental well-being matters. Here's Larry Mabry.
Hey, what's up? What's up, guys? It's good to hear you guys on this beautiful day celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King's birth as well as celebration. Today, I wanted us to focus a little bit on self-worth. I think that's totally in alignment with the Dr. Martin Luther King's message. But before I go into this real quick, just want to kind of check in with everyone. Hopefully everyone's doing well. Had a good weekend, had a good time out. If you visit some of the marches, pretty good experience. Had an opportunity to kind of go down to the high school, Garfield High School, and spend some time down there. And that was a pretty good experience. So anyway, first of all, I wanted to let everyone know about our Call to Conscience Black History Month Museum. That'll be February 1st, every single day through the month of February, all the way through the 29th, from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. here at Rainier Avenue, 4916 Rainier Avenue South. And also, too, I had an opportunity to take a look at that, and I think you guys will be very, very impressed with it. We have a couple different things that'll be showing there, and the Seattle Black Panther Party installation will be there. Black Heritage Society of Washington will be there, as well as the Rainier Cinema Black Movie posters. The Negro League Baseball Seattle Steelheads will be there. The NAACP Washington, Alaska, Oregon will also be there, as well as Ezel's Famous Chicken. If you like chicken, definitely get caught up with Ezel's. Nasty Mix Records, Sir Mix-a-Lot, South Seattle Emerald, Museum of History and Industry, community keepsakes and memorabilia, as well as the Total Experience Gospel Choir by Pat Wright. And last but not least would be the Black Prisoners Caucus as well. So make sure you guys come take a look at that. Again, February 1st through every single day of the month of February, right down here at the Columbia City Theater from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Okay, without further ado, today I want us to get caught up with what I call self-worth. We're going to explore self-worth, a journey to personal empowerment and understanding, cultivating, and nurturing your self-worth. And you may say, well, what is self-worth? Okay, well, let's talk about that. Self-worth refers to the inner value and sense of worthiness that individuals attribute to themselves. It's a deep and fundamental belief in one's own inherent value as a person. Irrespective of external validation or achievements, self-worth is rooted in a positive and unconditional regard for oneself, encompassing and acknowledging of personal strengths, accomplishments, and a passionate acceptance of one's flaws and imperfections. Now, I wanted to bring this up because when you think about Dr. Martin Luther King, he had to have an immense amount of self-worth for him to pave the path that he paved. He had to basically believe in himself no matter what anyone said against him in that situation. Well, how does one support themselves with self-worth? Well, self-worth is rooted in a positive and unconditional regard for oneself. See if I can move the slide here. Encompassing an acknowledgement of personal strengths, accomplishments, and compassionate acceptance of one's flaws, imperfections. Excuse me one second here. Imperfections, personal strengths and accomplishments, as well as a compassionate acceptance of one's flaws, imperfections, which helps us improve and cultivate our own self-worth. Now, I wanted to bring this up because I know for me personally, as I've been going and growing within myself, sometimes we get challenged with self-worth. Sometimes we meet up against people who don't always agree with what we want. but we still have to move on. Okay. All right. Let's go into what is self-compassion, because that's important. That's a very valuable point to gain self-worth. We have to be compassionate toward ourselves. We have to treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that you would treat or offer a friend. We have to embrace self-compassion by acknowledging mistakes without harsh judgments. And I wanted to address this because a lot of times we may say a lot of negative things and have negative self-talk to ourselves, but our subconscious actually picks up on that. So it's important for us to be mindful of what we're saying so that we are showing self-compassion. Now we're going to take a look at a self-worth scenario. A lot of times my clients, when I meet with them, they may say, well, how do I handle this situation? So I want to give a scenario and let's kind of break down in this situation. How do you handle that when you're like forced in a situation where you have to look within your self-worth? So imagine that you receive a constructive feedback from your supervisor on this particular project. And the feedback, while intended to be helpful, points out areas for improvement and highlights mistakes made during the process. Well, in the situation, it's natural to feel a blow to your self-worth, as a criticism may trigger feelings of inadequacy or failure. So the first thing you want to do when you're in that situation is you want to separate behavior from self-worth. A lot of times, if you grew up in a family where maybe your mom or dad or loved one may have said some negative things, you kind of take that on for yourself, but that's not really true. So you want to, first thing you want to do is you want to separate the behavior from the self-worth. So you want to understand that criticism is direct at the specific behavior or actions. It's not at your inherent worth as a person. Let me say that again. It's directed towards your specific behavior or the action involved. Is not at your inherent worth as a person. So you want to remind yourself that making mistakes does not diminish your value. But what's really interesting is, when you're a little kid, mom or dad may have to reprimand you and share something things with you, and you may take that on personal. And then as we get older, we kind of think that that's an issue with that, but we want to separate that. All right. So keep that in mind as you're working on your self-worth. Also, we want to acknowledge the emotions, because if someone says something to you, it's going to allow you to feel emotional. So you want to feel the emotion as they arise, whether it's disappointment, it's frustration, or self-doubt. It's important to acknowledge it. You don't want to negate your emotions, but the process of the emotions, you don't want to judge it. You just want to notice it. You realize it's there, but you don't want to judge it. After you experience that, you want to practice kindness and empathy. So speak to yourself, and this might be an internal dialogue. Like, it's not really something that you're saying out in blatant, like, to people. This is like self-talk. So within yourself, you want to speak to yourself with kindness and empathy. So let's say you made a mistake, or going back to the coworker scenario, the coworker may say, oh, you know what, you really messed up with this project. You let's say you put the particular pallets in the wrong place, and you may take that personal. But maybe you didn't get the proper training. Maybe you just had a bad day that day, or maybe you're just tired, or you just weren't paying attention. That happens. So in that regard, you want to say, you know what, and this is kind of self-talk. You know what, everyone makes mistakes. And kind of be easy on yourself. Use positive, supportive language. So sometimes when you're critical, if you can't say something positive, then you may want to say something neutral. So I like saying, everyone makes mistakes. What could I have done a little bit different next time, or in that same situation? Or just say, you know what, it happens, right? And as you would when you're using positive language, the same thing you would do if you're supporting a friend, right? You want to avoid harsh self-criticism. A lot of times people may say negative things, when they do something, and you don't want your subconscious to believe that, because our subconscious starts to carry on that. So just keep it neutral, right? To kind of disengage from that, and be careful of those negative things, because our subconscious kind of tries to play those out. So we want to kind of be gentle with ourselves with that. Okay. All right. Next thing we want to look at is what we call reflect on the feedback. So in the event that your coworker or supervisor says something, reflect on that, because obviously they said something that's important. You want to make sure you value that. But you want to reflect on it because they obviously said that for you to improve on something. And you want to honor that, because at the end of the day, their objective, you would hope, is for you to be successful and for them to be successful. So you want to take a step back to objectively assess the feedback. But if you're emotionally charged, then you're not going to be in a space where you can actually take in that feedback. So you want to identify the areas where you can learn and improve. And then you want to take a proactive approach, which means you want to move forward, demonstrating a commitment to personal and professional growth. So what did you learn in that situation? So for those individuals that are online, go ahead and hit us up on the chat. Let us know if you had a conflict, if you had a situation where somebody came at you, how did you handle it? Were you aggressive? Were you upset? Did you take a step back and say, you know what? Okay, that's a good point. I can maybe look at it from this perspective too. All right. So feel free to communicate in the chat. Also, you want to focus on your strengths. A lot of times when you're going through a conversation with a supervisor or coworker, in your mind you may say something negative, or they may highlight something negative, and it's like, okay, what are some things some strengths you have? What brought you to that particular environment, or what brought you to that job, or what do you do well in that situation? And remind yourself of your strengths and past accomplishments, because obviously for you to get there, you had to do certain skill sets in order to get there. So be mindful of that. Remind yourself of the positive things, of the strengths that you have, your positive accomplishments. Reflect on those instances where you succeeded and contribute positively. For example, are you a hard worker? Do you show up every day? Are you persistent? Those are good qualities that are going to help you be successful in anything that you do. If you think about it, whenever we do something new, there's always going to be a learning curve, right? But if you're persistent, you're a hard worker, you don't give up, you're going to always be successful, even though there might be some challenges. So think about that too, as far as your self-worth. Okay. All right. The next thing is you want to seek clarification. So sometimes there could be misunderstandings as far as how you perceived it, as well as how things were conveyed. And also too, sometimes your supervisor may not have communicated in a language style that you understand, a learning style that you understand. So if certain aspects of the feedback are unclear, seek clarification from your supervisor or maybe another trusted individual that you confide in. Understanding specifics that can help you address concerns more effectively and demonstrate your commitment to improvement. Also too, you can reach out to other individuals like myself, right? So for those individuals that know, I'm a life coach, and I work with individuals who need support, whether they be in businesses, whether they be in relationships. And I've been doing it here in Washington for about 3 years, but I've been doing it for about 20 years totally. So anyway, just want to kind of put that out there. So seek clarification if you need to, just to make sure you understand things. And sometimes when you talk to another individual, like a third party, they can kind of give you insight that maybe you didn't see. Okay. Also too, make sure you set what we call realistic expectations. Recognize that perfection is unattainable. How many people out here are perfectionists? Yeah, sometimes you in your mind you want certain things to happen, but when you execute it, it may turn out a little bit different. So be mindful of that. Recognize that perfection is not attainable, and that everyone encounters setbacks. It's okay. Adjust your expectations, because sometimes there's pressure on a certain number that you got to have, or just personal pressure, right? Adjust your expectations to allow for the mistakes and just view them as opportunities, right, to learn and grow. And then for me personally, I like to find the humor in situations. And so I'm going to kind of digress and express a situation that I experienced. So currently right now, I've been kind of working on a task, and I feel like every time I'll give you a situation here. So I was on my way here for the particular radio show today, and kind of got my slides and stuff, everything done and everything. And I got out of my car, and it was a little cold today. And when I got out the car, I grabbed my phone because I had my phone charging up. And guess what happened? Well, it fell out of my hand. So, and I have an iPhone. So the first thing I'm thinking, man, I don't have a case on it. Normally I have a case, but I didn't put a case on it. It slipped out. Guess what happened? Well,
Oops.
Oops. The screen cracked, and I'm like, ugh. Now, ironically, I was thinking about getting a new phone anyway. So that pretty much let me know, yeah, I definitely need to get a new phone. And I was thinking, man, could have been worse. But I just found a humor in the situation. I'm like, well, you know what? It still works. I'm going to end up getting a new phone anyway. And it is what it is. So not really getting attached to situations, outside of your control. The realistic expectation is, next time I should probably be a little bit more careful. But that didn't happen. So, I just have to kind of accept it and just laugh it off and keep it moving. And that kind of relieves a little bit of stress too. All right. Another thing too is we want to talk about communicating effectively or communicating constructively. So if you feel that criticism was delivered in a way that was negatively impacted or has negatively impacted your self-worth, consider discussing it with your supervisor or another coworker to get another opinion, and communicate your feelings, right? And preferences for personal feedback in a constructive manner. Now, why is that important? Because it's important for your voice to be heard, but also too makes you balance your emotions. You don't never want to really come at somebody like irate on 10 and things of that nature. So sometimes you might need to step away, kind of clear your mind, cool off. One strategy I use and recommend is just take a deep breath, hold it for 3 seconds, 1, 2, 3, and then let go.
Phew.
Yeah, what that does is that puts you in the moment, gets you kind of calm down, kind of relax. And it also gets you out of that fight or flight mode, because sometimes when people say things to us, we feel like we're being attacked when we may not be, but it's a fight or flight response. And so what happens when you put it in the corner is you want to lash back. So if you can just kind of just accept it with no judgment and just kind of sit with it, process it if you need to, and then you can communicate kind of your feedback in a respectful manner. A lot of times too, when you share that, then they'll hear you, and then they'll work towards making it work for you as well. So, all right. Also too, this is really important. We want to develop a growth mindset. That means that at the end of the day, we're all trying to evolve, right? If we look at in terms of like how we were as children, we matriculate from kindergarten all the way up through high school, college, what have you. Each year we should progress and get a little bit smarter, evolve a little bit more. We want to embrace the growth mindset by seeing challenges as opportunities for development. Let me say that again. Challenges are opportunities for us to develop and to understand that abilities and skills can be cultivated over time through our effort and through our learning. Okay, so how do we use the growth mindset? Well, some people may ask that, and you know what? I want to kind of get some strategies to that. So sometimes we may see things one way, and what I have here for those individuals that can see is I have the growth mind, developing the growth mindset, where we use certain terms that kind of help us shift our mindset, so we're looking at things from a different perspective. So instead of saying I'm not good at this, we can say things like, what am I missing? Now, what's the difference between the language, right? When we're saying I'm not good, that has more of a negative connotation. However, when we say what am I missing, that has more of a neutral connotation. Do you hear that? Or if we say I give up, then that's pretty much just not allowing the work or not trying to put an effort to resolve the situation. And also in our mind, when we give up, then we don't come up with solutions. However, if we say I'll use a different strategy, then we're problem solving and becoming what we call developing a growth mindset. Or if we say it's good enough, then we kind of limit ourselves. So instead of saying it's good enough, we may say something like, is this really my best work? And just really holding ourselves accountable and really being the best person that we could be, right? Because we know at the end of the day, if we are participating in somebody, we want them to bring their A game, but then we had to hold ourselves accountable and say, yo, are we bringing our A game too? And some days we aren't, but we want to be honest and authentic so that we could work on that. Also too, if it's too hard, like if we say something like this is too hard, then another strategy or something to say might be something like, this may take some time, right? What's the difference between, because think about whenever you do something new, it's always hard in the beginning, right? But so there's a learning curve, so it's going to take some time, right? So what's the difference between this is too hard to this is going to take some time? Well, that means you're gonna pursue it, you're gonna work through it. It's going to take some time, but you're going to eventually get through it. Okay, what about if you say something like, I made a mistake? You can say, well, mistakes happen or they help me learn, right? So in the situation with me and my phone, I learned I need to definitely make sure I put my phone away before I step out really quickly. Okay. Instead of saying, I just can't do this and just giving up, we can say, I'm going to train my brain, which means that you're setting yourself up for success. You're focused on success regardless of the situation, right? So instead of saying, I'll never be that smart, which is more of a negative connotation, we could say things like, I will learn how to do this, which means that you'll be persistent Even if it takes you a little bit of time, day after day, month after month, you'll eventually get it. Okay. What if we say something like plan A didn't work? We don't just give up. We can say, well, there's always a plan B. And you think about it. Yeah, there's always a plan B. It may be a situation where you may not know, but you might need to talk to somebody who can help educate you on that plan B. All right. What about my friend can do it? You can say, well, I can learn from them. So that's more networking, kind of working together. So I wanted to kind of give these strategies to kind of help you focus on that growth mindset, to kind of help you get out of that fight or flight type of thinking. All right. The next one too is we want to do is we want to take action. But also notice I said take positive action, because well, you want to use the feedback as a catalyst for the positive action, because obviously if they said something, it's going to kind of spark you, kind of get you like excited or initiate or communicate something to you. And you want to create a plan to address the areas that you need to improve, and then demonstrate your commitment to that professional development. What I like to say is take one thing that you can work on, right? So it's not overwhelming, right? So, for example, with me, I'm working on eating healthy. So when I go out, I just try to make sure I eat a healthier meal. So today, I actually went next door and had some tuna and a salad. You know what I'm saying? So that for me was great. So just take one positive thing, try to do something to kind of change that, and then as a consistency, you'll get better with that. Okay. Plus, that helps your self worth, because what, you feel better because you're honoring yourself and handling the actions that you set forth. Okay. All right. Next one. Let's recap real quick. So, earlier we talked about the what do we do to kind of develop our self worth and build our self worth, and basically to build our self worth when we're going through a situation that's like a conflict. We want to make sure we separate the behavior from the self worth. So the example I gave was, making sure that we don't take the behavior personally. We focus on the behavior and then change we notice the emotion behind it, but we change the behavior based on that particular situation. Okay, because we realize that our self-worth is not tied to that behavior. The next one is acknowledge emotion. So even though we may be frustrated, we see it, we notice it, we feel it, we experience it, but we don't really kind of catch on to, we don't like stick to those. We just kind of know them, notice them, acknowledge them, let them flow through, but we don't just stick to those. Also, too, we want to make sure we practice compassion or kindness and empathy. So towards self. So if we notice that we did something wrong, like in the situation where I dropped the phone, I wasn't mad at myself. I was surprised, but I wasn't mad at myself. I said, okay, well, you know what? I need to get a new phone anyway, right? Am I excited? No, but I'm not going to stick to it, because I know at the end of the day, it's just something I can replace. Okay. All right. Then what we're going to do is we're going to reflect on the feedback. So in my situation, I dropped the phone, immediate feedback. Okay, I need to get another phone. Focus on the strengths. Well, I would say if you have certain strengths, like maybe you're a hard worker, or maybe you listen really well, or maybe you show up on time, things of that nature, focus on those strengths, right? And then work on one thing that you can improve on, right? All right, seek clarification. And this means maybe talking to somebody, communicating with someone to make sure you have an understanding, because that one person or that group of people can help you do better with your self-worth. And it doesn't have to be people at work too. It could actually be in the community. It could be, as I said earlier, where I talked about the Jedi Council, individuals that you have in the community that help you with your mental health. Because every day you're working on that. You're constantly building that, right? And also to set realistic expectations. So that's why I said one. Just focus on one thing. So that way it's not overwhelming. Throughout the course of the day, we have so many things we need to handle, and it could be a little overwhelming. So we don't want to add that more stress to ourselves, right? Also to communicate constructively, right? I like to use I feel statements. So you may want to say something like, I felt this way when you did this, right? So you're not pointing a finger at anyone. You're letting them know how you felt. I felt upset, when you raise your voice. I would appreciate it if you won't raise your voice next time, right? And then that way you take responsibility for your feelings, and you don't want to point a finger at somebody else, because they say when you point a finger, if you notice, you got three fingers pointing back at you. So you want to make sure you're mindful of that. Also, to demonstrate the growth mindset. We talked about that. And be mindful what you're saying. Maybe change some of the way that you're communicating things so that it's more neutral. And also just take positive action. Okay. So just want to say that. Wish you guys the best. Also, too, real quick, as we get ready for wrapping this up shortly, I want to say those individuals. Our next show host will be Dr. Tracy Harrell with Better Together and Living Powerfully. She'll be starting the 6 o'clock broadcast. And also, too, wanted to say, oh yeah, for those individuals, she and I had a pretty good time a while back. I'm wishing her the best for 2024. Check her out. A lot of cool things that she'll be sharing there. And also, too, want to remind you guys one more time to come to the Call to Conscience Black History Month Museum. Once again, that's going to be February 1st, all month. So February 1st all the way through the 29th from 11 a.m. all the way up to 7 p.m. here at the Columbia City Theater. Check out the exhibits. I think that that's a good support to show your support for the leaders here within Seattle as well as within the community. And I think what's really cool about this particular museum event is there's going to be a lot of people within the community that's doing some pretty cool installations. So if you guys get a chance, come on down and take a look at that and see what you guys can learn from that. So real quick, I'll go through a few of them. We got the Negro League Baseball, Seattle Steelheads. We also have the South Seattle Emerald. We also have the Ezel's Famous Chicken and the Black Panther, the Black Prisoners Caucus. My apologies for that. And also Seattle Black Panther Party. So, all right, guys. So without further ado, I'll see you guys next week. You guys have a good one. Peace and love.